Parents and kids, listen up. Metro is seeing a relatively new drug on the streets. It's an animal tranquilizer, but it's being mixed with other dangerous drugs just like fentanyl.
Fox 5's Joe Vigil just talked with the Metro narcotics captain. He's live in studio now to explain why police are so concerned. Joe?
Yeah, well, fentanyl has killed many people in the valley and devastated many lives here. Metro is talking to us and others about Xylazine to get the word out and working to make sure it doesn't spiral out of control like fentanyl.
Do we have any Narcan they can bring to room 16?
Well, Metro has dealt with many fentanyl overdoses. Captain Brandon Clarkson with Metro has seen plenty of ODs, including kids who died.
Walking into an investigation and seeing the family sitting there, they're looking at you, they've obviously been crying. You go up and you see what you see, and it's heartbreaking. I instantly think of my kids, and this could happen to any of us. And then you walk down and you see the family looking at you, and it's with pleading in their eyes that to give anything to get their child back.
Now, locally, those in the fight against drugs are now seeing something new and dangerous on the street: Xylazine. Communities on the East Coast have battled overdoses and deaths for a while now. President Biden has designated fentanyl combined with Xylazine as an emerging threat to the U.S. Metro police say Xylazine has spread from the East Coast to southern Nevada, the same path the department saw with fentanyl.
Are you worried that Xylazine could be like fentanyl at some point?
I don't know. It's still so new. I will tell you, I'm afraid of any drug that has the potential to cause mass harm.
Xylazine, known on the streets as Trank, was approved to be used by veterinarians in 1971. Trank is used to tranquilize horses, but has made its way into illicit drugs to prolong the high. Just this year, Metro says it started seeing Trank in narcotics it finds on the streets here.
We have about a dozen incidents where we've found pills. We have them tested at our lab, and there's amounts of Xylazine in there.
Xylazine is sometimes called a zombie drug. It suppresses the respiratory system, breathing can slow, and people can become lethargic and die. Trank is mixed with other narcotics to spread out a batch of drugs to make more money. And while fentanyl is still the big concern, there is a big worry with someone who overdoses on Trank.
The issue I have with Xylazine is that it's a non-opioid, so the Narcan that we're issuing to counteract the effects of fentanyl, unfortunately, Xylazine is not. Narcan will not work on Xylazine.
Captain Clarkson says people should still use Narcan because fentanyl could be a factor too, but someone overdosing on Xylazine needs to get to the hospital right away. The captain doesn't want to see anyone else die from overdoses, including kids, as Metro still warns people that one pill can kill.
I want anyone that's potentially going to take this pill and say, if this hasn't been prescribed to me by a doctor, that they can potentially die from this, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, you take a big risk. And by the way, those who deal drugs that turn deadly for someone are being charged with murder here. And Senator Catherine Cortez Masto has introduced a bill that adds the illegal use of Xylazine for humans to federal regulations, including the DEA's list of scheduled drugs. Now back to you.